You know that moment, when everything just stops. No texts, no calls, no updates, just a heavy kind of quiet that almost hums through your chest. At first you tell yourself it's fine, they'll come back, they always do. You try to stay calm, convince yourself that silence means strength, but deep down, you start to wonder if this time, it actually means the end, because when a dismissive avoidant, and you both go quiet, the silence isn't the same for both of you. For you, it's full of thoughts, memories replaying like echoes in your mind. You think about what went wrong, what you could have said, whether they still think about you, but for them, silence doesn't sting the same way, at least, not at first. For a dismissive avoidant, that space feels like safety. It's their comfort zone, a world where they don't have to explain, don't have to feel, don't have to risk rejection. They sit in the silence like it's a familiar room, and for a while, it gives them peace, because the pressure to connect, to show up emotionally, finally disappears. But what they don't realize is that silence changes things. That same quiet they use to protect themselves slowly starts to work against them, because the more you pull back, the more they start to sense the emptiness they tried to escape. It's not immediate. It creeps in slowly, softly, until they can't ignore it anymore. And in that moment, when even the avoidance starts to feel your absence, that's when everything begins to shift, not in the noise, but in the silence you both created. At first you tell yourself it's okay. You'll give them space. You'll let them breathe. Because somewhere deep inside you believe, if the connection was real, they'll come back. You repeat it like a mantra, hoping it'll calm the ache inside your chest. But then, days start to stretch. You wake up and check your phone, half expecting a message that isn't there. You scroll through old chats, rereading words that once felt alive. Now they just sit there, cold, distant, almost like they belong to strangers. You think about sending something, a small text, a simple hey, but then your pride stops you. You remember how they pulled away, how their tone changed, how they said they needed space. And so you wait. The first few days feel strong, empowering, even. You tell yourself you're matching their energy, doing the right thing. But silence has a strange way of turning strength into sorrow, because every day without them feels a little heavier, a little emptier. It's like you're living in a house where every corner still smells like them, but they're gone. You start wondering if they even notice your absence, if they're thinking of you when the night gets quiet, or if they've simply replaced you with peace. That thought hits different, because for someone with a deep heart, silence isn't peace, it's torture. It's the kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just lingers quietly in your chest. You go about your day pretending you're fine. You laugh, you work, you post. But every time your phone lights up, your heart jumps, just a little, hoping it's them. And every time it's not, something inside you sinks deeper. You start to realize this isn't just silence anymore. It's distance. It's the space where love used to live. And even though you're the one staying strong, you can't help but wonder how something that felt so deep could disappear without a sound. And that's when it begins to hit you. This silence isn't healing you anymore. It's starting to hurt in places you didn't even know existed. For the dismissive avoidant, silence doesn't sting. It soothes. Where you feel emptiness, they feel ease. Where your mind races, theirs finally slows down. It's not that they don't care, it's that caring feels dangerous, because somewhere in their wiring, closeness became a signal for pain. When you stop reaching out, something inside them exhales, not out of relief that you're gone, but out of relief that they no longer have to feel that invisible pressure, the pressure to be available, to respond, to open up, to be seen. To you, connection feels like warmth. To them it feels like exposure. Like standing too close to a fire they're scared might burn them again. Avoidants build quiet fortresses around their hearts, walls made of calm tones, short replies, and disappearing acts. And when the silence begins, those walls feel strong again. They tell themselves, finally, I can breathe. They dive back into work, distractions, routine, anything that keeps their emotions buried deep, and for a while it works. But here's the truth, no one sees that relief isn't peace. It's a temporary illusion, the calm before a quiet storm, because silence may protect them from discomfort, but it also starves them of connection, and even though they don't admit it, they crave it, deeply, quietly, secretly. You see, the avoidant mind runs on control. When they're distant, they feel in charge. When you stop chasing, they think they've won. But control and comfort are not the same thing. And deep down, when everything goes quiet for too long, they start to sense something slipping. Not the relationship, but the part of themselves that felt alive in your presence. They won't show it. They won't text. They might even convince themselves that they're fine. But the truth is, even their silence starts whispering your name. Because no matter how high their walls are, your absence becomes the one thing that breaks through them, not with noise, but with the quiet they once thought would keep them safe. But here's what they never expect. When you stop chasing, the silence that once gave them peace starts to echo differently. At first, the avoidant tells themselves they're fine. They believe the distance means safety, that they've regained control. Days pass. They fill the quiet with distractions, routines, logic. They convince themselves it's better this way, that closeness only complicates things. But beneath that carefully built calm, something begins to shift, something they don't fully understand. It starts small, a random thought of you while they're scrolling through their phone, a memory that surfaces while they're half asleep, your laugh, the way you used to say their name. It flickers for a moment, and they push it away. But memories are stubborn. They don't leave just because someone decides to forget. And slowly, silence begins to lose its comfort, because now, that same quiet that once felt peaceful, starts to feel empty. It used to mean freedom. Now it means absence. It used to give them relief. Now it gives them a strange kind of restlessness. They start noticing your absence in subtle ways. In the spaces between songs, in the empty notifications, in the quiet before bed, and even though they'd never admit it, they start to feel the tension they thought only you felt. You see, the avoidant never expects to miss someone who stopped chasing, because in their world, people always come back. They've learned to pull away, knowing you'll fill the silence for them. But this time, you didn't. This time, the silence stayed, and suddenly, it doesn't feel safe anymore. It feels strange, cold, unpredictable, and deep down, that's when it begins. The quiet panic that maybe they've lost something real. They don't say it, they don't show it, but that silence starts echoing like your absence has a heartbeat. And in that soundless space, they finally start to hear the one thing they've been running from all along, their own feelings. Even the most dismissive avoidant can't outrun the bond forever, because when the noise fades, when there's no message to ignore, no call to avoid, they're left alone with something far more powerful than your words, your energy. At first, they don't realize it. They think they've escaped the intensity, the emotional pull, the weight of connection. They tell themselves they've regained control, that they've found peace in detachment. But real peace doesn't come from running away. It comes from being able to stay still, and stillness, for an avoidant, is where all the ghosts live. It's in the silence that your energy begins to echo back to them, not your voice, not your messages, just the feeling of you, the calm in your presence, the warmth of being understood without having to explain. It lingers, it hums quietly in their subconscious, showing up in moments they least expect. Maybe it's when they hear a song you once shared. Maybe it's when they see something that reminds them of your laugh. Or maybe it's when they realize that the peace they thought they had doesn't feel peaceful anymore, because it's missing something human, something real. Avoidants spend so long avoiding emotional reflection, but silence has a way of turning into a mirror. And when that mirror shows them what they've lost, it's not the texts they miss, it's not the calls, it's the connection. that invisible thread that tied their chaos to your calm, and that's when they start to feel it. Not as longing, not as pain, but as a subtle ache, an unfamiliar emptiness that logic can't explain away. It's not that they suddenly want you back, it's that your energy begins to visit them in the quiet moments, and no matter how much they try to suppress it, it reminds them of something they didn't think they needed, to be seen, felt, and loved without having to run, because in the end, even the most distant hearts can't completely silence the memory of love that felt safe. And then, it hits them, quietly, unexpectedly, in a way that even they can't explain. They'll be going about their day completely normal, maybe working, maybe scrolling, maybe lost in something meaningless, and suddenly your face flashes in their mind, not because they wanted to think about you, but because your energy slipped through the cracks of their walls. At first it confuses them. They don't understand why you're there again, why a person they've convinced themselves to detach from still lives inside their thoughts. They'll start to replay old moments. That one night you stayed up talking for hours, the way you looked at them when you saw past their defenses, the silence after your last conversation. These flashes don't feel like nostalgia, they feel like disruption, because the emotions they've buried are beginning to move again. They'll try to fight it, they'll distract themselves, rationalize it, even mock the idea that they miss you. But the truth is, they do, not in the dramatic movie-like way, in a quiet, haunting way that lives behind their logic. For a dismissive avoidant, vulnerability is like fire, mesmerizing but terrifying. They want to get close enough to feel its warmth, but not so close that it burns the armor they've built around their heart. And that's why they won't admit it. Not to you, not even to themselves. They'll scroll past your social media, but stop for just a second too long. They'll draft a message, delete it, then stare at the empty chat box like it's holding their guilt. They might even convince themselves it's nothing, but deep down something inside them is shifting, because for the first time, the silence they once chose doesn't feel peaceful anymore. It feels hollow. They begin to realize that running from connection never really made them free, it just made them alone. And in that realization, even if they'll never say it out loud, they finally start to feel you again. So, what happens next? When the silence becomes too loud, when their thoughts start circling back to you, the avoidant doesn't come running. They test the silence. It begins subtly. A random story view at 2 a.m. a like on an old post, one you uploaded weeks ago, or maybe it's something even quieter. They'll ask a mutual friend about you, pretending it's casual, or they'll scroll through your profile without interacting, just to see if you still look the same, if you've moved on, if you still seem open, if you still feel safe. Avoidants don't reach out directly. That would feel too vulnerable. They prefer to peek from behind the curtain, to sense, not to show. So they might post something cryptic, something you'll understand, a quote, a song lyric, a picture that holds a hidden message. It's their way of speaking without saying anything, and when you don't respond immediately, a strange panic begins to rise inside them. They'll tell themselves it's just curiosity, but it's not. It's their heart, quietly realizing it might have waited too long. Sometimes they'll even break their silence, not with a confession, but with something small, disarming. Hey, how have you been? Just saw something that reminded me of you, or maybe just your name appearing on their screen again, as if nothing ever happened. But you'll know. You'll feel that message is loaded, because it doesn't say much, but it means everything. That's their test. They're checking if you're still there, if the door they once closed still opens for them, because part of them wants to know you haven't completely moved on, and another part is terrified that you have. And in that single moment, that story view, that tiny message, that quiet digital nudge, the avoidant finally reveals the truth they've been hiding behind all along. They never stopped thinking about you. They just didn't know how to come back. If you both stop contacting each other, remember this: silence isn't always the end. Sometimes it's the only thing that makes them finally feel. Because silence The same silence that once felt like loss can also become the bridge that brings clarity. It's the space where masks fall away, where the avoidant finally meets their own loneliness, and where you rediscover your own power. You see, love doesn't always fade with distance. Sometimes it transforms, and what felt like rejection was really redirection, a painful, necessary pause that showed you who was meant to grow and who was meant to go. The avoidant may never fully say it, they may never admit how deeply your absence changed them, but energy doesn't lie. Your silence spoke louder than any text, any argument, any tear ever could. It told them, I'm not chasing peace anymore, I'm becoming it. And that's the moment the dynamic shifts forever, because the power they once had in distance, you now hold in calmness. You're no longer waiting for their message, you've learned to send one to yourself, through healing, through stillness, through choosing not to beg for love that can't meet you yet. And when they finally do reach out, if they ever do, you won't respond from pain, you'll respond from peace. You'll see the same story, but you'll no longer play the same role. So if you both go silent, let it be a silence that transforms you, not one filled with waiting, but with awakening, because real power isn't found in chasing connection, it's found in embodying it. And when you become peace, you stop asking, will they come back, and start realizing, you don't need them to. Don't chase peace, become it.